March meeting of the Parks and Recreation Board. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. And since we have some scouts here, I was wondering maybe some of the scouts might want to come up and help us lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Guys, come on up top here. There you go. You guys come on in here and get yourself lined up and you can lead us, huh? Thanks for coming out. Step back to the flag and look at the flag and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
All right, thanks very much, Troop. We're going to jump around the agenda a little bit this evening to accommodate the different groups that are out here, et cetera. And so we're going to go right to, well, actually, before that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that's approved. We have a presentation from the Radnor mountain bike team proposing a mountain bike trail over at Mauricio Park. So I'm going to ask that group to come up and make that presentation for us, please.
We always like that. That's a good idea.
First off, we would like to thank you for letting us come and present in front of you for approval of Mauricio Park. My name is Parker Bruns.
I'm Pearson Bruns.
I'm Matthew Fuller.
Great. You guys just try and talk into the microphone because we are on TV this evening, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Parker and two of Radnor. Like Radnor TE. I don't know how to say it, associates that are out at a pre-ride for a race. Okay, so youth sports organization open to all Radnor Township 6th through 12th grade youth. Participate in PA Interscholastic Mountain Bike League, Pennsylvania's League Pickle. NICA, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, is the parent organization for Pickle and over 20 other state leagues. In PA in 2018, there were 35 teams, over 700 athletes, and 400 coaches across Pennsylvania, more anticipated in 2019. Other local teams include TE, AIM Academy, Great Valley, Westchester, Henderson, Downingtown, Owen J. Roberts, Twin Valley, Somont, Northeast Philly, and Lower Bucks. Team Radnor students participated for the past 3 seasons. This is the TE mountain biking team on a pre-ride before a race. Who we are and what we do. We are a youth development organization that uses mountain biking to inspire healthy lifestyles, build strong communities, and teach respect for the environment. We are building strong minds, bodies, and character in an equal and inclusive environment. Our vision: empower youth through mountain biking. Our strategy: develop and support programs and curriculum that allows us to reach into every PA community and introduce students of every skill level and background to the positive benefits of mountain biking. The league is responsible for establishing a climate that will provide students who have the desire to mountain bike with the coaching and camaraderie that will help them achieve both competitive and non-competitive cross-country mountain biking goals in a safe and enjoyable manner. Develop an awareness of what it is to be an amateur athlete that is both courageous and respectful to their community. Create an environment in which they may discover new friendships and find role models. To guide their students towards learning new skills and disciplines, and spread the foundations of mountain bike racing across the U.S. Foster a responsibilities attitude toward the use of trails and wilderness. Promote the values of cycling to our community as a mode of transportation and as a lifelong sport. Cheers.
That's a picture of some members on the TE team. Okay. The National Interscholastic team is NICA. It was founded in 2009. Its main goal is to develop mountain biking skills throughout the country, and the coaches are the main role models for the student athletes from 6th to 12th grade to learn how to mountain bike better and improve their skills. Student athlete membership program, NICA, national is the National Risk Management Educational Scholarships, NICA Awards, NICA IMBA, Teen Trail Corps, NICA Promotions and membership benefits, coaches license programs, NICA Leader Summit training, curriculum development, ongoing training, national community webinars, and membership support. NICA envisions a future where NICA students, athletes are advocating for and making a significant impact on our cycling environment. Teen Trail Corps is supported by REI and the Walton Family Foundation. It is a program that provides NICA students, athletes, the opportunity to serve and give their time towards bike-related advocacy activities. It is designed to provide exposure and be a gateway for NICA students and athletes into the world of advocacy. To earn a badge for each category, athletes must complete 4 activities in respective categories, spending from 1 to 4 hours on each activity. The Teen Trail Corps badges are: Speak, create a powerful voice by teaching your peers and representing youth when discussing trails, public lands, and policies that are bike-friendly for a future that desires a healthy activity lifestyle. Serve, build a strong community and grow as an individual by engaging in the stewardship and construction of environmental sustainable trails. Respect, understand appropriate trail etiquette and the ability to demonstrate and educate respect for other trail users in the natural setting where we ride. Demonstrate personal commitment to riding with respect and educate others how to ride with respect. And the final badge is Teen Trail Corps Captain, which is earned when the athlete completes all 4 of their badges. This is me and my brother getting our awards for doing service hours last year on building trails, and I got this jersey for being the top 6th grade student last year. Boy. And grit with my mom.
So I'm the girl tonight, and Susie Bruns, will be the head coach, team director for the team this year and future years, as I still have a third grade girl coming up through the system. Tonight I'm also here with Jonathan Mount, and he will be another coach. I see a couple other people in the audience as well. James Decker. I can't tell if there's others back there or not. Is Galen here? Great. So even our TE team coach came in support this is part of this program, is our teens and youth being out advocating about the program. And specific to NICA Grit, it is a national program of girls riding together. And NICA recognizes that equality is not synonymous with equity. Equality is treating everyone the same. Equity is giving everyone the respective tools needed to be equally successful. And NICA recognizes that this has traditionally been a male sport, and to give our females equal opportunity to be riding together, feel safety on the trails. They promote a pre-ride for girls only on before races, some other fun events for females in the sport. Pennsylvania has its own grit camp. So it is equal opportunities truly for the men and the women that are participating in the sport. And we do already have several girls who are looking forward to participating in the upcoming years. So just want to say thank you, but I'm going to turn it back over to Parker to talk a little bit more about Radnor MTB.
Thank you, Mom. So we anticipate at least 10 riders from 6th grade to 12th grade in the Radnor schools to participate in the Radnor team. The team is also open to all Radnor residents regardless of their school. The option also exists for other Delco residents to participate in the Radnor team, such as the Radnor youth participated in the TE team until this year. The other Delco residents will be able to will branch off when they have enough support for their own team. If financial hardships exist, scholarships will be available for equipment and registration for people who want to participate. And then our coaches are trained and certified with NICA. The athlete to coach ratio is a maximum 6-to-1 for any rider practice, with a minimum of 2 coaches regardless of the number of athletes. Our goal is 4 athletes to 1 coach. All registered athletes and coaches are insured with NICA insurance when participating in a team event, practice, trail work, etc. Safety is one of the foundations of the program. Students must always ride with a helmet, no exceptions. So the reason we want Ordovicio Park as a practice facility is because it's extremely convenient to the Radnor Trail for students and coaches as well as other members of the community. The section of the park we would like to use is underutilized and has wooded areas that are ideal for mountain biking and single track. The opportunity for Radnor athletes to support NICA and PA mountain biking values stewardship of the trails and wilderness. We will use IMBA, International Mountain Biking Association, guidelines for trail building and stewardship, the standard in trail building. We will not use a competitive mountain bike venue by Radnor mountain biking, practice and skill boats. The Ordovicio Park will be for practice and skill building only. It's not big enough to hold a race. So the section of Ordovicio Park, this is the section of Ordovicio Park we want. As you can see, it's the wooded area. And we don't need any of the grassy sections for the trail. This is a rough sketch of what the trail would look like if we were to build it. Okay. So the trail composition will be primarily single track, which is pictured in the picture right there. Which single track is a strip of trail wide enough to hold 1 bike, absolutely no more. And then we will have as little double track as we can, which is 2 bikes. We will maintain the trails, and we will try to get 1 to 2 miles total through Ordovicio Park, looping and through some grass sections. This is another picture of single track. And this is single track in the fall. As you can see, you can almost not see the trail, and it is very minimal. So this is what one of the races looks like. And as you can see, there's not enough room for Ordericio Park to hold a race, because this is not even half the people that show up during race day. A typical race weekend is composed of the Saturday, which you pre-ride the course, and then you go to your hotel and sleep or camp out. And then Sunday morning, which there's another pre-ride if you miss the pre-ride Saturday. And then there is the racing on Sunday, which you have broken up by ages and skill level, as well as gender. Okay, so this is us at the end of last year's season. Thank you.
Thank you. So, just so I can make sure I understand and maybe share with our board up here and the public out there, you've established a team. You're going to open that team to youth in Radnor, not necessarily in Radnor schools, but any youth in Radnor or Delaware County where they don't have their own team. And you're looking to get approval to build basically a single track trail through the woods in Ordericio Park that you can use for practices for your team.
Correct.
That's the objective of why you're here this
That
evening.
is why we're here
Yes.
this evening.
Okay, great.
So that definitely gave you an overview of what the entire program is, that
Mm-hmm.
it's an opportunity for all Radnor youth, as well as that coach to athlete ratio. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of adults that participate
Mhm.
as well. And because the nature of the program is it's a growing sport, I'm not talking to the microphone, I realize. It's a growing sport, and so the idea is there may be one community that starts, but then from that, other teams will grow, which is the concept that we've had with the TE composite
TE,
team. Is
right.
these kids have participated there, but we're ready to launch here in Radnor. And there were other communities that maybe weren't going to be able to participate with TE because of resources, but now we could open that as an option to continue to promote this non-traditional sport with more youth.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So maybe what I'll do is, and as many of you want to stand up there, welcome to, I'm going to open up for this board to ask questions of you about the presentation, about the subjects, and then we'll finish that up and then ask for public participation with regard to this issue, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay.
So, questions for this group?
Yeah, I'm just scribbling them down now. It would be helpful to see what the standards are for the construction of a trail that you're talking about, and I guess you mentioned standards, so it would be good to see.
It's approximately a 200-page document, so I easily can get that to you. Did I bring it with me tonight? No. It is the standards that are used for trail building in mountain bike facilities across the country and the globe.
Okay.
So when we say it's an international, it is truly international.
It would really be helpful to see that, because I have no
Does
idea.
that have an executive summary? Is an executive
Yeah.
summary of that
Yeah, that's
at all? Because the odds of any of us reading 200 pages about trail building is long.
So, from the imba.com website, there's a lot of information about the organization and the standards that are used for trail building. That would be the fastest way.
So what was that
to get
again?
information.
Can you give me that site again?
imba.com.
Okay. That'd be great. I assume these trails, well, I shouldn't assume, if the trail were to be constructed, would it be just for the use of this organization, or would it be open to everybody in Radnor just to use it for
So-
whatever purpose they might have in mind?
So our hope is that anybody in Radnor can come and walk the trail, ride their bike on the trail. This would also help with the drugs and alcohol usage in the park, because you would be able to see the people in there better through the clearing of brush.
It became evident to us there are
Other activities.
Other activities.
Other activities going on.
Wooded area that we are looking at, and that would get cleaned up. That's that's part of the stewardship that the students do, that the athletes do, is that maintenance and stewardship of the area that they ride. So the area, the wooded area in particular, would be cleaned up. And we would encourage them to go beyond just where we're building a trail, because it is somewhat extensive in that area. This would also keep residents who are accessing that part of the park to a trail. It makes more sense to walk on a trail than just traipse willy-nilly wherever you want to go. So that is one way that stewardship of your community is advocated in the.
Yeah, related to other folks using it, how many days per week or hours per day would be used by the organization itself?
So the organization.
Susie, I'm sorry, could you
itself-
pull the microphone over? Thank
The
you.
organization itself is 2 to 3 afternoons or early evenings. As times change, daylight, et cetera, it would only be used during daylight hours, after school, perhaps on Saturday, although Saturday we usually look for a longer ride elsewhere. From July to November is our official season.
Okay. Does TE have a trail, or you mentioned that being part of TE?
TE does have a trail.
Something that we could look at to see what it looks like?
Certainly over at Cedar Hollow Park, which is Matthews Road and I don't remember the intersection. Cedar Hollow Road. Cedar Hollow Road and Matthews Road by Vanguard.
Okay. Oh, okay.
The team put a trail in there last year. They also use facilities at several of the TE school district sites, which we will also be speaking with the school district about not only the grass area around Odoricio, but possibly some other facilities that are Radnor School District owned. Valley Forge Park also allows us access for larger group rides.
I don't want to dominate, but I have a couple more, if that's okay.
Sure.
When you mentioned who is about building there, who exactly is going to build the trail, and how does that work when a private organization is? I mean, I should know this, having done it myself. But how does that work when we have somebody coming in to build a trail on our park property? I mean, what arrangements have to be made with the township and insurance and all that kind of stuff?
Well, in this case, if it's a volunteer project, it would be no different than the trails
No
that have been
different than what
cleared
we've done.
through Skunk Hollow or any of the other locations.
Okay. Having done that. Okay. Maintenance, the same situation, I guess, that we do in other parks where volunteers are doing the maintenance work.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one other comment about the maintenance of the trails. It's actually integral into the sport that the students actually all participate in maintaining. The team point system includes how many hours each of these children go out and maintain trails. That's actually part of the point system for team competition. So it's actually integral to the sport. So it's not an empty promise that they're going to come out and actually pick up trash and rake up, sticks and obstacles that appear on the track. And so it's the kids. One of the things I love about it is the kids are really being taught in a very positive way how to take care of their environment. If they don't take care of this, it won't be there for them in the future, and that's really something that they get to understand, and builds a really valuable, trait in them, that this is important for them to be involved in and to maintain this. So it's very integral to the sport.
And one other thing, and this isn't really a question for you guys, but for us, I'd be really interested in knowing what's back there in the way of trees and wildflowers and wildlife and what have you, to see what what would be disturbed or what we'd be giving up there. But I think that's probably on us to figure that out.
From our scouting, which of course has mostly been fall, winter, there is a lot of the invasive vine that you find throughout Radnor Township, choking off a good bit of growth in that area. There is some undergrowth. How much of it is starting to come up now, that I do not know. Unfortunately, it does look not kept. It looks that it has not been taken care of for however many years. So we're aware that there's some work. I will say the work we do, the kids are out there generally like with loppers and rakes. We're not talking major power tools. We're not taking large equipment. NICA does not permit them to be using large equipment, so that's not their responsibility to be doing. This is where you would then have some adults coming in, working with the township and saying this log may need to be removed, and we'll need to talk about that process, but those are things that we don't really know until we can have permission to be in there and identify where a trail would go and what might be in the way of that. So that's a partnership that we would welcome, working with you to see exactly where we could put the trail so that we're not disturbing the wildflowers or the native plants that have been able to take root.
That's it for me, if anybody else has.
Okay.
Okay.
First of all, great job, guys, presenting your team. It's excellent. I love the idea, and I especially like the idea of stewardship being part of the team. And I'm curious, is this plot of land been vetted out for a trail? I saw that you had an outline, so is it
No.
work for your team? Does it work for a practice? Is it the right amount?
Yes, it's perfect for a practice.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
So the size of the wooded area, from what we've been able to tell, we could accommodate, when we say a 1 to 2 mile, the little diagram that was in there was just a sketch of the conception of what it would sort of be, that it would be winding, it would be looping. There would be probably another sort of direct route back to the top that would not cross and loop, so that there's sort of a circuit that could be going on. When we say 1 to 2 miles, that would also include getting permission from the district for around the grass area as well, or the side hill that's between the wooded area and the actual fields that are there, not knowing exactly where those boundaries are, just making certain that both organizations are involved in the permission process. We don't need that without you, however, so we're coming to you first. And
So is the
there-
access
So-
on the field side? Is that how you would
So the
try to?
access right now, we would be looking off of the approximately 10-foot path that was recently cut across the top of the property, that is my understanding, for stormwater. That was originally our question of how would we access that, and initially we had thought from the lower area. There's a small grass field, it seems. However, there seems to have been some recent work that was done, and that will allow us access from off of the basketball court area into the back, and then come down the hill in that way. So are you familiar enough with the lot to understand? Mm-hmm. So sort of we would start at the top of the ridge and work down and then climb back up, would probably now be the...
I just wanted to commend the young men here. It takes a lot of courage to come here and advocate for a position, and you all did a very nice job. I'm not saying one way or the other on the merits of it, but I just want to tip my hat. There are a lot of adults who wouldn't be able to stand up here and do what you folks did. So regardless of how this turns out, a tip of the hat to all of you. I have a couple questions. Is there any signage required to mark the trails or anything like that?
So we would not envision signage. If that is something that other organizations that we would partner with at some future point, if the township would look at that, it could be done. We're really looking for a path in a wooded area that the kids are allowed to ride mountain bikes on. That's really what we need.
Sorry, I lost my any tree removal envisioned?
I hope not, except for the stuff that maybe is already down that should probably just be cleared out as a possibility. But again, until we're able to be in there and really looking, I can't know that. If there's safety things and people accessing the trail, that was something that would need to be considered. But again, that goes with health of a wooded area.
My day job intervenes. In terms of insurance, does the group have insurance for any kind of problems might arise while they're there?
So if we are in there for an official team activity, we are covered with the insurance that is part of our registration process, so that our athletes are covered when we are in there for an official practice, team building event, etc. The question came up from someone of, well, what about everybody else? That is public access to public lands, just as there's other insurance that needs to be carried for any other park that Radnor owns.
What I may say is, I've been a member of Little League as an umpire and a coach, and also with PIAA as a junior high and high school baseball umpire. And I've seen the insurance that these various organizations have. What I was very surprised by and very encouraged by was how good the insurance coverage is for these young men. There was an incident, I guess, last year where somebody had to go to an emergency room, and I think the parents were out like $50 was the total bill. The insurance is very inclusive and covers any kind of an official event that the kids and the team are involved in. It's really excellent insurance, better than I've seen in any other youth sport that I've been involved in.
One last, on the grass areas, I'm assuming that what is used for a soccer field and the baseball field, that's not a part of it. It's all the way out what would be in left field and down that little ridge?
It beyond the left field marker.
Okay.
Yes. So the field sit up a little, it would be the higher and the outside. Correct.
One
We
thought.
wouldn't touch soccer, baseball, whatever else takes place there.
One thought occurred to me, and it probably wouldn't be something that would be a concern of this group directly, because I'm sure they wouldn't do it, but those large hills that sort of form the natural amphitheater, if you're sitting up there trying to watch sporting events, those hills would strike me as enticing things for people to want to ride their bikes on.
As would the fenced-off former quarry, as it's been referred to. So that would be something that we would talk about with our athletes, and I know that there are kids that are going in there and using them on a day-to-day, here we go, around the park. We would have very clear guidelines with our athletes about their behavior at practices and official events. Can we control everything they do? No. However, that would be not well looked upon by Mrs. Bruns. So, that would definitely be part of the conversation we have. But I understand what you're saying, as well as the staircase.
Well, and I suppose there's two ways to look at it. One is to say that you're drawing more people there to use those things. The counterpoint to that would be to suggest, well, now you're giving them a more organized place to do that riding, rather than feeling the need to ride down the steps, as we've all seen, or down those large hills that frame the baseball field. So,
Yes, right.
had to mention it.
One other thing I'd like to point out, this is not what you're used to seeing, like, X sports with kids doing, loop-the-loops in the air and that kind of thing. This is, they learn to do things like what they call log overs, so they can actually take a bike over a log, how to ride over, through the mud or on a grass surface versus over a wet route. You can see the bikes are very, very sophisticated, but these are not BMX bikes. This one here runs somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. This is very sophisticated equipment for a certain kind of riding. It's not daredevil, it's not jumping off cliffs and all that kind of stuff. It's legitimately them learning how to ride through various environments in a safe manner and also with speed. The races are raced for times. And a typical lap might be 20 minutes, and some of the races are 2 or 3 laps for these young men and young women. It's a very grueling physical activity, but it's not daredevil bicycle riding by any stretch of the imagination.
How you doing? A great presentation, though. Thank you for that. A couple of things. I know that there are deer and fox in that area. And what were the hours again? I think you said, but I sort of like zoned out.
So it would, for the team use, it would be more than likely no earlier than 4:30, but always finishing by dusk, simply because they're not going to be out riding at night for safety points. So that would be our intended team use. There may be some Saturday rides, but as I said, normally we try to look for longer distance on Saturday, which that would not be at Odoricio. Could we control public access at other times? No, nor can we at other parks other than posting the signs or people knowing it's dawn to dusk is the allowable times.
Okay, so it's basically the same along with the park then.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I know with this bike trail being back there, it's going to be very enticing for other young people just to be able to jump on that trail. My other thing is I think they mentioned it also, there's a cliff there where the Indian used to post on the fence. And I know as a young man, I used to take my bike down there, and the edge between that cliff and where you were riding was no wider than this. But we went flying through that, you know. I'm not saying it was the smartest thing to do, but kids will be kids. Is there, I guess we could probably put up a fence there along that side?
There is a fence. There is fencing along
It's still
the
there?
cliff. It is
Okay.
still there. How sturdy or stable it is, I don't know. But again, that becomes is it correct? There are children that are in there. When we've been exploring, we have seen other youth in the area, and kids will be kids.
Right.
So from that standpoint, if more of the public begins to use the park, it may be a fence that should be looked at. But more than likely, there are continue to be youth being youth, as youth tend to do, already continuing in your footsteps.
Yeah. And one last thing, I noticed the diagram that was put on top of the woods. Is that?
That is not to scale. That is for example only, to show you an idea of what a looping trail may look like in that area. Not to scale, not exactly where it would go, because we're not in there able to see what.
Okay. That's fine. Because I was looking at that, and I'm thinking right there at that corner is where the basketball court is. Now the other thing I was thinking, on the side where the soccer field is, that little open area there, that you go down and around where the log cabin used to be, and then going up that way, would that be an alternate route? Or
It would be,
or
or
do-
an additional.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, in the middle of the driveway, there's sort of like where you used to go sledding down that hill all the way down to the cabin. You could also go in that way and then go around up there as well. But I guess my biggest concern is with the wildlife back there, and because we used to run into deer all the time that would scare the daylights out of us while we were riding through there. And I think we got to a point where we were trying to make as much noise as possible going through there once we knew what was going on. And most of the trail is going to be by the bikes themselves. It's going to be made by the bikes themselves.
Correct.
Right.
I mean, we'll get in there and we will clear so the kids know where they're going. But normally what happens is you start to see the trail the longer the season goes along. And then spring regrowth happens, and we
Right.
may need to go back in and they start to ride again the following season. And in time, there may be things that stop regrowing. But initially, yes, often you're back every spring, starting kind of over again, clearing out again, kind of reestablishing this is where the trail went, and continuing on a yearly process. As far as the deer go, right,
is
I don't
what
know
it
how many
is.
are living there now. Neighbors have told me that there have been some requests to clear out some of the deer herd. Potentially, this would help, having residents accessing that area on a more regular basis. The deer may decide to try to find somewhere else to go, but we never know what they're thinking these days. I'd love to talk to the raccoon that's constantly in my trash. So.
And just a little story too. Early in the morning, about 6 o'clock one time, me and a friend of mine, we were getting ready to do some jogging, and all we heard was this gallop coming down from the hills. And we were both sitting there putting on our sneakers, and this deer ran right between us going down. And I mean, we didn't even say anything for a few minutes. We were just like, what just happened here,
Yeah.
So, when they want to be seen or, make their presence known, they do that.
And
But-
they're also great at hiding themselves when they don't want to be found.
Exactly. But I think it's a great idea. I hope it goes forward, and great presentation, too.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I have a quick question for the boys. Great presentation. Thank you, fellas. How many fellas are on the team or girls combined on the current Radnor team? And what do you hope to, like, what's your goal in terms of recruiting, and how many people do you see using the trail with your organization?
So currently we
We know there are
Yeah,
5
yeah.
that will be at the high school. And then we have 2 dedicated, 6 at the high school? 6 at the high school. And then we know there's at least 2 at the middle school, so that we're at 7, 8. And we have several, we know, young women coming up in 6th grade. Sorry, I know I took over for you. And then, you know, almost weekly, there's someone else who's like, oh, I think I know a kid that would like to do that. So, you know, I tagged another one today, and we'll see what they do. There is interest in the youth out there of having another opportunity, a non-traditional sport that's organized with real community behind it. We talk about the race weekends. They are family affairs. It is probably like my 6 favorite weekends of the year. You really see the state come together. One of the really cool things is you are seeing kids from other parts of the state at these events. We have family in the Harrisburg area. I joke it's the only sport that my nephews and my children will be able to participate in together on a regular basis. You know, we're not talking because everybody made it to state championships. This is on a regular basis. Kids from across the state come together to race, which is really pretty cool. Go ahead.
I just asked the coach of the Tredyffrin Easttown team that included Radnor last year, how many were on the team? There were 68.
Wow.
This is a very rapidly growing sport, and one of the things that I really loved about doing this with my stepson was we would find ourselves in play, like last year's schedule was Pittsburgh, Johnstown, Raystown Lake, Gettysburg, Elkton, and guess a few other locations as well. Where? Fairhill. Oh, Fairhill. So they're taking a 3 or 4 hour or more sometimes drive. So it's, you know, we're getting up 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning, driving out there. They're doing their pre-ride. They go back on Saturday night to the hotel with their families. It becomes a real family event. And to give you an idea, these race events are attended sometimes by as many as, you know, 300 or 400 riders, and then there's probably more adults than that at these events. So it's really very much a family-oriented thing. It's whole weekends for probably 8 or 9 weekends in the fall. The kids are just, you know, they're getting a chance to like meet people from other areas of the state because they're coming from as far away as Erie, I understand. So it's truly a unique sporting event for children of this age to be able to interact with kids from other parts of the, you know, of the state and country, really.
And I have one question. I love the idea of self-maintenance. And what does maintenance look like, and how often, and how frequently, how long does it take? That's it for me.
So what we have kind of picked up on other experiences, to get the trail started initially, we're looking at probably you know, upwards of maybe 7 to 10 days to really get it, 7 to 10 work sessions, I should say, to make certain we're clearing out the litter that's in there, any other large debris that we've come across, looking at and making certain that we're putting the trail in the right place. We're not going to go in there the first day and make the trail. We're going to kind of say this is where it would be ideal, mark it with some little pins. Hopefully nobody comes in and moves the pins, and then we can go back and we can say, yes, this works, or well, this has popped up, let's reroute it a little this way, that type of thing. And then we get in and we start to say, this vine needs to come out. This is a problem area. This brush is starting to grow. And we look to start to do those things this spring as the team can begin practices in July. So we want to make certain that it's done in enough time that we would be able to kind of get in there right away and do those 1 to 2 weeknight practices before the race season begins in September. Okay, does that enough?
What about ongoing maintenance? I think I was like,
Well,
what does that
then
entail?
it's, you know, as you're using it, somebody else came in and littered, you're clearing that up. As you get into the fall, what continued to grow. So there would be some regular work days, probably 1 to 2 a month, depending upon what was needed, how often throughout the year, that type of thing. Is that?
Again, great job, fellas. Just a few questions. I'm on the school board with Chuck. I'm a liaison. So I just noticed a couple of school district-oriented issues. First being, and I was glad to see mentioned in here that you'll be getting permission from the school district to access that part of the park that we own, which is good. Just by the way, just recently got these documents yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to look at them thoroughly. So, but looking through them now, so this is not a school club, just to be clear. So this is an independent. You're working with the PA Interscholastic Mountain Bike League, correct? So this is an independent volunteer effort,
Correct, just as other Radnor community sports are separate from. Will there possibly be in the future? I
Sure.
don't know what these guys will do. I'm fully aware of what a club sport at the high school contain, what we would need to do for that. But at this point, we're looking at a community sports.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Just two more very quick questions. So I assume that you've looked at other places and that Odoriso Park was at the top of your list. So maybe just a couple of reasons why.
Certainly, one of the questions that often comes up is why not the Willows, Skunk Hollow, that area? It's already quite used by pedestrians. We know that there are many people that regularly are over in the Willows, and we respect that. And having mountain bikers come through when you're used to your regular Tuesday 5 p.m. walk, we recognize may not be welcome. This is a township-owned wooded area that has been underutilized for all of these years. We have a group of students and coaches that are willing to come in and work in that underutilized wooded area and make it something that's available for all Radnor residents. The proximity to the Radnor Trail, which we all know is heavily used by bicyclists, is of course a huge plus for the location of the park and what we're looking to do as well. It's close, it's accessible to downtown Wayne. So there's a lot of positives of why Odoriso versus possibly some of the other. Itham Valley has come up. I'm not as familiar with the Itham Valley Park simply because we do like the proximity of Odoriso to the Radnor Trail.
Great. Thank you.
I do have, again, great presentation. Now, I kind of view things a little differently. So if you could run me through a practice session, because it's a one lane and it's timed. Okay, so can you run me through like actually how that would happen?
Yes. So we would start out practice with like a warm-up ride, and we would just ride the courses that we're riding tonight. Before that, there would be a check-in where everybody would sign in, and then at the end of the meeting, everybody would sign out, and if there's somebody not accounted for that was there, then we would go looking for them. But that hasn't happened as far as I know. But we would pre-ride what we're riding that night with groups. And then we would split up individually, and we would just ride it as many times as we can, going at our own pace. Some of us would push it, some of us would go slower.
And there would be a coach there
Yes, there would be.
that's monitoring.
For every 4 athletes, there would be 1 coach.
And then as far as competition goes?
There would be no. There would be
Well,
no.
there would be no competition on this one, but when you guys do go to competition, can you just explain that not quickly, but how that happens? Because
Yes,
it's
so
interesting.
So we start off, there's a pre-ride on Saturday.
Okay.
So you would drive up there, you would do the pre-ride, just to get familiar with the course, try to get a good time on the course. And then there would be some other event. You would hang out with your team for a little bit and then probably go back to your hotel or campsite whichever one you're doing. You would wake up about 6 o'clock Sunday morning, 6 to 6:30. Good for a pre-ride if you didn't go the day before. And then you would race, which is from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Sunday.
Explain how, though.
Yeah, the racing is by age groups, skill level, and gender. So girls race separately from boys. It goes 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, JV1, JV2, JV3, and then varsity. So essentially, 9th grade is JV1, then sophomore is JV2.
So if you enter as a team, does each team member run a loop and get a time, and then they're added together?
Explain how the actual.
Yes.
How you actually compete?
Okay, so everybody lines up, and then according to your time from the last race or your total of times from the races, everybody lines up, and then they go 3, 2, 1, and then everybody rides through the trail trying to beat everybody else.
So there's 6th grade rides, however many minutes, and if they make it through 1 lap, then they're allowed to continue for a 2nd lap, and obviously those that finish 2 laps would be ranked before the people that only finish 1 within that time frame. Is the same then for
But there's
each
only
of the
one.
subsequent.
There's only one person on the track.
No, you race as a group. So think of it like Broad Street Run on mountain bikes, where it's a mass start for whatever category. That's a little different. So whatever category the students are in. So they line them up so that there's safe space between the cyclists.
Okay.
And that's why you'll see a large start, a wide start that then narrows down to a course, where some areas at single track on these courses, that's often where you see double track. And that's why we would need some minimal double track so that the students can practice what it means to pass when they're in a race scenario.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Does that answer?
Yeah, it does
a
help.
bit better? Okay.
It helps. Thanks.
Just have a couple of quick ones. One thing I think we need to do up here is to balance the use of the park for one set of users versus what impact it may have on the surrounding residents. And with that in mind, 2 questions. One, you probably won't have an answer to. The other one, you might. Is this the type of trail that's going to attract people who might go to Wissahickon, or is this only going to attract young people?
So Wissahickon is more of an advanced mountain biking trail if you're going there to mountain bike. This would be more of a beginner mountain biking trail. So if you're just beginning out, maybe you would join the team, and then we would ride here with you.
Okay.
It's also probably good for parents that are trying to learn the sport along with their kids, but aren't as fast, as skilled, as technical as, so adults could use it. It's more beginner friendly than what you're going to find in other areas.
I do the skinny tire and stay on the paved. This doesn't have the risk of being the Manayunk Wall, where people from all the area are going to want to come use it. And then another question you probably don't have an answer to, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there any experience with other parks where they've added a trail and any kind of impact that's had that anecdotally or otherwise you can cite to? And you might not be able to.
Well, if you don't mind, I might be able to have Galen, who's the coach at TE, come up. He's on Tredyffrin Parks and Rec Board, so perhaps, do you mind, Galen? No. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Galen Day. Like you, I'm a park board member, but for Tredyffrin Township. But I also coach these great kids these last couple of years. So as far as our experience, and I'd be happy to have you guys come out to Cedar Hollow if you'd like to see it. The approach that we've taken is it's very low impact. I mean, the general idea is that we're just trying to find a path through the woods that the kids can ride to simulate a race environment so that they're comfortable. And it's a way to slowly introduce them to more advanced processes, right? So we have certain trails we start on, and then we introduce another section that's a little more technical, and it's a long teaching process to make sure that they become safe riders over time. In our park, the general idea was that we want to make it so that it's almost non-existent. If we were not going to be in there for, say, 18 months, it probably you wouldn't even know it was there, right? And so when we picked our lines, we used the IMBA rules, and that's really more about water maintenance, making sure you don't create a line that water runs down, and so it's really a matter of picking the route that's going to not have that occur. So that's the primary as you build it. And then for us, the rules were we don't cut it down any trees, no trees at all. If the way you think of it is if you took a door and you walked a door through the woods, that's about the space that you need, right? And that way there's no branches that could hit kids in the eyes. And when we did it in Cedar Hollow, we would effectively look at it from that perspective, but we would look for a massive nest of vines. And we said, we're going to go right through that, right? We cut out all those vines. So we tried to do it in a way that was not only getting the kids what they want, but clearing as many vines as we could. I think we probably put 250 hours last season into that park. A huge amount of it was trash removal. These kids probably put 20 hours in themselves. But you know, that's a big part of what we do. We did, I think in total over 500 hours of trail work and community service last year. So not only within our park, but we go to French Creek, Marsh Creek, Wissahickon, we volunteer in all those different places. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Can I follow that up with a question? Now that, if you're going down past where Vanguard is?
Yes.
Is that the new ball fields before you go over the bridge to 202?
202.
On the right?
Exactly, yes.
So you're close to an existing park, similar to what this is?
Yes.
So there was an existing park that was there, and then you've added this piece to that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, it's the woods behind that ball field.
Right, gotcha.
We really like to have grassy areas because we teach very specific skills, and when you break down a skill, you want to start in grass, and you have the kids run through it, and make sure they have it worked out, and then you progress it into the woods, and it's just a process that we do. So we start almost every skills practice in the grass before we go into the woods.
Can I ask one more question? There's a neighborhood near there as well?
Yeah,
As
there are.
Any response from the neighbors on that park that you can share?
Yes, it's actually been surprisingly good. We've been riding there, and we've had people come through. There's an old railroad section bed that goes across that joins the Chester Valley Trail, and people come from across 202 and they walk their dogs through there regularly. And we've had people stop and say, "This is great. I can now walk down by the stream because you guys have kind of introduced a way to get there, and my dog plays in the stream now, rather than us just walking onto the Chester Valley Trail." So we see that. It doesn't get a lot of use. It's really only dog walkers, because I think our trail is about 1.5 miles in total. So it's not a destination for, mountain bikers that really want to go out and ride, but it's good for kids and community.
I just wanted to address a couple of your concerns about the quote-unquote zoning issues, if you will. I also happen to be an architect, locally employed, self-employed, and I've also been a zoning officer for about 10 years, so I'm well-versed in balancing the rights between different uses of properties and tracts of land. And one of the things that occurred to me about this is actually, as was alluded to before, when you start having some activity in the woods, it may actually have a positive impact on some of the negative behaviors that may be taking place there. In addition to that, I could very well see these guys running, during a practice, running into other kids who are biking in there, and literally, instead of having those kids unsupervised biking in there, become part of the team and they become part of a supervised sport. I can only see it actually being a positive. This does not bring a lot of noise. It doesn't bring a lot of trash. It doesn't bring, kids who are unsupervised and doing things to the woods that are inappropriate. In fact, quite the opposite happens. And so my impression would be that actually for any of the neighbors, they might actually see some improvement, less trash blowing into their yards, the activity there being supervised and not, kids who are just hanging out in the woods. Sometimes hanging out's just, not a positive event. So that would be my, impression of the probable impact of this kind of activity happening in the woods there. I can see it much more positive than negative. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that no resident would ever be bothered by this. That's a very personal thing.
Great.
Just one last question. How many years has the Skunk Hollow Trail been there?
Oh, the Cedar Hollow?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Cedar
we
Hollow.
actually put it in last year. Last year was the first year that we used it.
Oh, okay. All right.
The two prior years, We did actually, we have a small trail on the Valley Forge Middle School wooded section that we had done the year before. And we actually liked that a lot because it was the first time we were able to take school grass property, combine it with some single track to do this progression that we really like to teach. And then this was a great expansion on that.
That's over by Chesterbrook?
Yeah, right by Chesterbrook.
Okay.
Yep, in the woods
All right.
behind there.
All
Yep.
right.
It's nice. The one thing I think that we drove our township nuts with was the amount of trash that we pulled out of Cedar Hollow. You know, it was, I kind of got to the point where I was like just taking trash home in the back of a trailer and putting it out at my curb because I didn't want to call again and say, okay, we found another lawnmower, you know, put that there. So it's amazing what you find in these places. At the school grounds, we find them, and in the parks.
Great. Thank you very much for a great presentation, fellas. You did a good job. Thank you. Giving us a lot to think about here. What I'd like to suggest is we're going to invite some public comment to see if there's any public comment with regard to your presentation. Tammy, I think one of the things that we'd like to get before our next meeting is some feedback from the insurance, the risk management side from the township and how they might consider this. I know that the team would have their own insurance, but obviously the township has insurance. We want to make sure that, because other people might be using that trail once it's set up that way, how we're covered there. We also get some feedback from our Public Works Department and from our Police Department about their thoughts about this program. So you and I can maybe talk offline about how to pursue getting that information before our next meeting. I'm also going to ask Howard and Claire, who are kind of the stewards for Odorisio Park, to try and get out there and take a look at the trail or the woods and the trail, et cetera. I'd like to come with you so that we have a little better feel for it, because again, we only got this information yesterday, so we didn't have a lot of time to digest all of it. So we want to have a chance for a couple of our board members, and obviously all board members will be invited to do that as well before our next meeting. So so we'll continue at that point in time. So thank you very much.
And can we include someone from your organization on that walk? I'd like to.
That'd be great. Tammy, you have Susie's contact information?
I do. We can get that information so we can share
Okay.
that with everyone.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing as well.
Sure.
I would recommend that just because sometimes the county maps aren't always accurate, that maybe we do evaluate getting a survey, because we're not exactly sure where those boundaries are that back up to each of those properties, as well as what delineates exactly where the school district's property ends and ours begins. I know it's a lot of space that's back there. I think with what you're able to look at the county, on the county mapping system, is about 13.3 acres is what we pulled up when we took a look at it. If you look at all the township land that's owned there, it's about 15, and then I think the school district's parcel is 9. So I just think we would want to be mindful maybe of what those boundaries are, just if we, end up getting into that discussion of some portion or, parcel of this, being on school district property. So we probably would want to take a closer look at that. I'd also advocate that if this was something we did, we would want to maybe try to keep it exclusive to mountain biking and not, obviously people would have the opportunity to walk through there if they wanted to, but I wouldn't look at other sites where there's already existing trails. I know that came up earlier in the discussion. I would try to keep it as more of a designated spot for folks who are riding the bikes through the trails. So I think that's really important just from a usage risk standpoint, on behalf of the township. I'd also try to evaluate cinching it into that property. You have a lot of space to work with. Maybe I'm not sure the topography. I've actually never walked through there. So it's a good opportunity to get out there as well and take a look at it. But, if there's a way you can leave a nice perimeter or a buffer of sorts, because you do have a lot of properties along Highland Avenue. You have a lot of properties along Maplewood. I'm not sure what the appropriate distance is, given, what would be mapped out through there. I know it was discussed about 1 mile to 2 miles possibly that would, I would assume, meander through the property of some sort. But we would probably want to look at that and leave some sort of a buffer so that it's not right there in the backs of people's properties. And then just one other thing, I would say if there was an impact to trees that's a potential, we would want to engage the township arborist on it, just so he's mindful. So if there's some mapping of the trail that gets preliminarily laid out. He could take a look at it relative to what the impact would be to the trees. And of course, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of vines and things that are back in there too. So, but great presentation, not to keep banging the drum, awesome job. I know I'd be proud if I was your mother. And I just think it's great to promote healthy, active lifestyles any way we can do it. It's not always team sports and baseball and football. Mountain biking has a place in our society as a really great opportunity for kids who maybe don't, gravitate towards the team sports. And we've seen things like that in the township be successful, just like our skate park out here. I know looking today, it was packed. We can see it from our offices, and it was just layered with people. So great job, and good luck.
Thank you. And I will say from the buffer standpoint, in our meandering, we were able to accommodate a good mile of walking with really not getting close to the Maplewood properties at all. The access that was recently cut through is a natural barrier to the Highland and kind of top Maplewood properties. And then as far as on Atlee, what would be most visible would be that, I think what we call the driveway, which is right beside those properties. The one resident sits back very far off of Atlee, but there is a chain link fence up already, and we would make certain that there would be a buffer between us and at least that fence. But there is already a lot of fencing that exists around that park, so that when we were in there, we were able to be mindful of we wouldn't want to get too close to the neighbors, and we were, as I said, we easily had over a mile just walking. So we welcome a chance to get in there with all of you and show you what's there, definitely.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
you.
I was kind of hoping you'd leave that bike. Okay, is there any public comment with regard to this presentation?
Hi, my name is Laura Duran-Giles, and this is Jane Golis. My neighbor. We live directly along the park, on the west side of the park, on West Wayne Avenue. And we also wanted to congratulate the young men on their presentation and the group for what they're doing. We certainly can understand and support some of those goals of healthy activities and stewardship, environmental stewardship, and I was very happy to hear that some girls and young women will be involved as well. We wanted to, we prepared the outline for you that was placed at your seats tonight, and I have extras if anyone wants them afterwards, but we just wanted to give an overview of what it's like living right next to the park. So for us, we're not arguing against any of the, the activities that you want to do, but we have a little bit of a different opinion of whether this is the right place for it. So to us, this is really, we're looking at this as a land use issue, as residents living right in close proximity to the park. So we wanted to just point out that the property in the very immediate vicinity there already contribute a really wide variety of uses that already benefit the community and also, just as importantly, the natural environment. So in that immediate area, we have, of course, single-family homes, multifamily homes, affordable multifamily homes, 2 churches, a pizza shop, the nearby 2.5-mile-long Radnor Trail, as you mentioned, which does accommodate bike riding, recreation that includes softball, soccer, basketball, cricket, and sledding, probably among others, playground, frisbee. And then in that wooded area, of course, there are shade tree issues and wildlife habitat. We can tell you firsthand that there's just an incredible amount of birds and fox, and of course the deer, as was talked about before. And also the canopy of trees, captures rainwater and the roots of the trees and the undisturbed leaf and soft soil. Of course, Radnor Township, I don't have to tell you all, it's a very important issue right now, the mitigation of stormwater runoff. So that's another aspect of something like wanting to use land for a purpose like this. So while we're, of course, really grateful to live next to this park, you know, we, as neighbors, we do absorb and address and deal with frequent, you know, issues and, you know, and unpleasant activities that go on there as well. So all the things that I just mentioned to us, of course, are very positive, but some of the challenging things are increasingly heavy car and truck traffic that goes by our homes, and much of it is exceeding the posted speed limit, very narrow sidewalks, endangering pedestrians, and literally rattling our homes at times. There's also non-compliant motorbike activity in the park pretty frequently, and we're concerned that if there's more trails put back in the woods, that there'll be even more motorbike activity. And also, as was discussed before, the late night congregating of young people doing things they shouldn't be doing. And also, I hope this isn't too colorful of a thing to say, but we have ball players who literally come over to the fence at our yards or even into our backyards and do things there instead of going over to the other side of the park and using the restrooms. And then also, to us, I think probably one of the most extremely disturbing things has been since Pennsylvania changed its laws with fireworks, and people now have easy access to the bigger, louder, mortar-type fireworks this past summer. It was, it's not an exaggeration to say that it was constant and at all hours of the night, you know, in the park and right around the park. So, you know, as residents, our experience is that, you know, while it's a great place to live, it's also kind of always kind of a constant balance between the great things that go on there and then dealing with the disturbances and the things that, you know, because we're there all the time as, you know, as homeowners. So, you know, we wanted to suggest that since we already have, you know, this wide variety of land use and what we see as really important issues of environmental, you know, of stormwater mitigation and undisturbed habitat, you know, we wanted to advise that, and I'm encouraged that it sounds like there are some other options too, and we see, even though now we understand more fully your proposal and that it's a more beginner trail, we still see mountain biking as something that we would suggest, you know, seems to us to belong in just a little bit more remote area. If there are more remote areas, you know, in the township. And I know that when you look at that, you know, if it's 5 acres of woods, it might seem like a large patch of land, but if you consider that, you know, it's you know,
It's our only patch of woods.
it's yeah, there isn't much undisturbed habitat, and all of this other, you know, the homes and everything else that's going on around it, you know, if you chase the deer or you chase the fox away or you chase the birds away, you know, where are we saying that there's no place that they should go? You know, we just would like to see that patch of land remain undisturbed, and that's what we wanted to recommend.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can further say that I've lived next to Ordorisio for 33 years now, and those woods are not underutilized. The neighbors use the woods. They walk in the woods. They bird watch in the woods. It's a quiet place. Do I want to have to wait for another day to go take my walk in the woods because there's kids riding bikes on a little trail that'll careen by me? Really, think about it. Can't I have a place to walk? Does every part of our parks have to have a sporting event going on in it? An organized sporting event, as nice as it could be.
And you know the other parks so well. You had some ideas.
Oh, yeah, there are other parks that are larger in our township that have larger woods, and I think they should be looked at also, along with Ordorisio, as possible venues for this sporting group. Because even though they are well organized and they're going to have adults with them, if you build it, they will come. So if there's a trail through the woods in Ordorisio, other people are going to use it. They even suggested that non-residents are going to use it. And it will happen. And I'm not sure I want to have a bike path in the woods, which is actually almost an apex woodland. It has native plants in it. There are some vines along the edges. I know, Howard, you know the woods very well, too. I mean, it's pretty much a free native ground covers in there and stuff like that. And I think it's been well taken care of, at least in my opinion, for the past 33 years. Nature does a pretty good job. You know, yes, there's fallen logs, and there are vines along the edges, but they're supposed to be fallen logs. You know, that's where some critters live. And I think having a natural respite area in my neighborhood is a good idea. And I'm also concerned about parking. You're bringing more and more cars now to the park, exactly at the time when the soccer teams are playing. I think there's a big picture you have to look at for Ordorisio. You know, sometimes you can't fit everything in the same space.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Board, and I'd also like to thank the young gentleman who appeared here earlier today. They did a wonderful job. I live at 227 Atlee Road, and my front yard is directly facing the area that we are talking about of building a trail. And not only do I live there, I know the neighbors who I've reached out to, and both of us are strongly opposed to having a bike trail in our front yard, or my front yard at least, and other neighbors have expressed similar concerns. I love activity. I've been a Radnor coach of baseball, soccer, ice hockey, so I don't want to stifle the activities of these boys, but I do think the Willows is a fabulous place for that. There's just more space, there is more parking, there are not residents living around there, and there's just a whole bunch of benefits from establishing it at the Willows. I also think that you are building an attractive nuisance here. And not only is it an attractive nuisance for kids in our community, but it's an attractive nuisance for others who might come to the park and run into issues. I don't think we want to encourage the kids to bike from our middle school across Conestoga Road at that bend there and have them potentially hit by cars. That's a disaster, and it is a dangerous corner. It's a dangerous in a car, let alone a bike. And to come from the middle school to there, it is very dangerous. I think it's a far safer place out in the Willows. We do have problems with the park as well. One of our recent problems that seems worse in recent years is the runoff that we get from the park. We've gotten tons of water and tons of dirt into our yard, into our streams. There's a stream that flows there into our pond that flows basically down Maplewood through our yards, through our neighbors in McBurdy's yard, through a pond on my property and into Mill Dam and down there, and even floods the Mill Dam pond. Taking out the vegetation will cause that water to continue to flow and flood my property and the surrounding properties. So that's a major concern. The neighbors and we have spent thousands of dollars cutting down dead trees from the water flow and replanting trees. And we don't want to be faced with that continuous burden as more and more water comes down. And once the bikes start going around the trail, there'll be mud there, and that mud will come down and it will no longer grab the water. That's a common problem. There is significant wildlife in that park. I think that's been well talked about. There's tons of deer, there's tons of foxes, birds, herons, and they can disturb the wildlife as well. The fence is also a problem. There's kids who climb over the fence. They cut through my yard. They climb over the fence. They bend the fence up. And I can envision this happening more with bikes. When you can't climb over the fence, you just rip it out from the lower levels, and then you can crawl under the fence and push your bike under the fence as well. And we've seen that in other parts of the border between the park and our properties where wood fences have been kicked out and broken down so people can go through the fence and cut through from the park to Atlee Road. And I do think you'll be bringing in people from other communities, and yes, they'll ride the trail, but without question, will they ride down the stairs or ride down those things? I know if I was a kid, I would do it. I've been on those bikes. I took it downstairs in Lake Tahoe, and we were riding down the stairs at the ski resorts when my boys and I had these bikes. So it's just something that you know, I know a lot of you, some of you guys here, and I think your kids would do it, and you would probably do it too if you had that bike. It's like riding a couch down a long set of stairs. They're great bikes. They're really fun. And, you know, people do want to jump those bikes because it's It's literally like riding a couch down a mountain. I've mountain biked those in Lake Tahoe too, and they're tons of fun, but I think there's a great place, and that place is probably the Willows. Again, the danger of these kids biking across Conestoga Road sticks in my mind. And one of the other, I think there are buffers. When I've last looked at the zoning rules on these parks, I think there are buffers that are required. So I think if any trail would ever be established, which of course we're opposed to, there are plantings that must go in, and those plantings or the activities must be set back from property lines. So if any trail is evaluated, which I hope it isn't, those would have to be considered, thereby pushing it into certain areas. And that the cliff that is there is very, very dangerous, and I don't know why, if I was to look to build that park or for riding bikes, I would not build it near or around a rocky cliff. Again, I just think it is an attractive nuisance, and it's a liability for the township and others who are involved in it. It's very dangerous, and to me, it have a great plot of land at the Willows. And when you go out there, you can see it. I'm happy to walk it if I'm invited. I received notice of this, only a day or two ago, and I've been traveling and other issues at home. So I haven't totally attended, but I'm happy to walk the park as well if I'm invited to do so. Any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody would be invited to do that, Dave.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Good evening. I'm Matt Golis. I'm on the Planning and Shade Tree Commissions. Just to let you know, we've surveyed 2,800 trees so far in Radnor, all street trees. This year, we're going to start on the parks. So I know there's some heritage trees in Ordovicio. We lost about a 250-year-old tree right on the edge of the property being discussed a few years ago. So all I want to say is that I'm going to bring the Shade Tree Commission up to speed on what we heard tonight on Wednesday at our meeting. And if there is a walk of the area, I would like to represent Shade Tree on that walk, and just let me know when you're going to do it.
We will.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Hi, I live on Highland Avenue, right near Ordovicio Park. I've lived there for 35 years now. Does anyone know if any part of that park is considered wetland?
No, as I said before, we just got this 2 days ago,
so
so
I
we haven't
think-
any chance to
I think
research
that
any of
it's
this.
important that we have that information. I don't know exactly where you'd get it from, but that's the biggest thing I have, and I share the concern that the other people have made. You may be aware that last summer, we actually had a letter from the chief of police concerning all the noise and disruptions that were occurring in our neighborhood. The other thing that occurs to me is, although mountain biking is one activity, dirt biking is also another activity that could attract, which we would not want in the township at all. And I don't know how you would control people from showing up on a Sunday afternoon, deciding to ride their dirt bikes for a while along such a trail. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Jansen. I think this is a great idea, great use for an underutilized piece of property. And I think once you get a chance to read the guidelines that these guys will follow to build the trails, you'll see that the way you're doing it from a conservation and a water management standpoint will be taken care of. I also want to point out that there's an opportunity here because the township owns a piece of property that goes all the way to Maplewood. So you could literally get off the Radnor Trail, walk up West Wayne Avenue, walk across Ordovicio, hit Maplewood, take a right on Maplewood, go down to the Little Darby Creek Trail, take that trail down, and you could get to the Willows. So it's another opportunity to make a connecting trail that maybe isn't on their plan, but I think I can probably convince these guys to build that trail. It doesn't have to be a paved trail, just a dirt track for walking on. So that's all.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl McBurdy. I live at 231 Atlee, and we abut Odoricio, and these are lovely people. I've known them for a long time, and I know they would do a fabulous job. Since we moved to the property in 2003, we've had to take down probably 15 trees in that quadrant of our yard from water. The roots have just rotted out. And my husband and I just recently walked through the wooded section, because we've been discussing it, and we discovered 3 storm drains that drain from the Maplewood area right into the woods. And I don't think they're holding tanks. I think they just dump into the woods, which consequently comes into our property. We have a pond which runs into the Herman's Pond, which runs down to Mill Dam. We used to have fish. The fish can't be supported anymore because it's silt. We dredged the pond once. It's silted up again. It's killed all the fish. The fish have no oxygen. We're part of that watershed. And I'm just worried. I worry more about the water than anything else, I think, because Radnor Township has a big problem. And we are the low spot. So Maplewood runs down, Highland runs down, everything comes right down to our little corner of the world. So I'd like to see that checked by the township. Where all those storm drains came from, who takes care of them, where they go, and a wildlife count. I'd like to see a wildlife count because there are very few places in the township where, the deer eat my plants every spring. But I want them to have a home, and I want the foxes to have a home, and the birds, and I think there are very few places you can go, which is why we all live in Radnor, because we have access to this wonderful wildlife. And I think it's tough. It's tough for them to find a place. And like I said, I hate to change there's a lot of trash in there and there's a lot of vines, but once those vines come out, here comes the mud and the water again. So I think there's a lot to consider for the surrounding area. I'm sure they would do a fabulous job, and I know they would maintain it beautifully, but I think we need to do a lot of studying before we make a big change to the topography. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Who's talking? Hey, Jake. I heard a voice from above. I didn't know where it was coming from, so thank you for being above there.
So I met with the residents today. We walked some of the property. I am going to get with Steve Norsini and try to connect with the residents and just look at the stormwater issue in that area.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the great presentation. My name is Michael Bowen. I've been a resident of Radnor Township for 20-plus years. Been riding bicycles since I was probably about 5 years old. Been riding them in the woods since I was probably about 6. Didn't take me very long to figure that out. Sounds like you had the similar experience. I just wanted to, so I've been mountain biking also. I've been doing races probably for the last 15, 20 years as well, multi-day experiences across the country. Have been following the work of this group and some of the people who have founded this group, both within Pennsylvania as well as nationally, and am just really seeing it take off. I have not to date been involved with anything that they have done, but I do intend to get involved with this group to the extent that there are things that I can help with. I have also was, as part of the mountain biking experience that I've been involved with, we were taking care of all the trails at French Creek. Which is a vast network, also very rural as well. And as part of that experience, I also took the IMBA class on trail building and trail maintenance. And as other folks have already indicated, that a lot of their guidelines are really focused on water management and water runoff. I was also on the board of the organization that is involved with the trails at McCaig. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. And they have not done such a great job with water management there, and it breaks my heart every time I go there. So I think that that these residents, I'm sure, have expressed some genuine concerns about, and it sounds like they are real issues, but I think also that maybe that some of the resources that these folks bring to the table, including IMBA's water management issues, might be able to help them and bring them some attention that they obviously haven't been getting, causing some of those issues that you've already heard about. So hopefully that will happen for them. And I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you for your attention, and great job, kids.
Great, thank you very much.
If you do decide to go and proceed on this, these standards are great, but are you going to hire professional landscape architects to help you deal with some of these issues? Because I can't see, you just come in and you say, okay, let's just clear this area out. You don't know what the impact might be in terms of water management and other aspects of it, unless you actually get some professionals involved in helping to plan out the layout of the trail and how to maintain the trail. They may be able to maintain it, but they need the guidance initially as to what would be necessary to maintain the trail.
Thank you.
Hi there, Isaac Denham. I live on Conestoga Road, right around the corner from the park. I run one of Wayne's 2 bicycle shops, and certainly as a resident of Radnor Township with kids in the school district, I kind of see both sides of this. I understand because my house, certainly I had flooding this year. I imagine just about everybody did, but I know that Wayne has a water management program. I also know as a mountain biker and someone who's been on many, many of the local trails that if they're built properly, it tends to be better kind of overall in terms of that water management. It's not just sheets of water going down, it's actually directed. I know that mountain bike groups kind of get a bad rap for having these trails and not being stewards of them, but that's not what I've seen in terms of the groups that I'm involved with. Mountain bikers don't ride in the mud. We don't tear up those trails when it's sludgy, because we know that it's bad certainly for the trails, and also it just ends up being kind of for everyone involved worse. So it's not, these guys aren't, it's not like it's going to be pouring and these kids are out shredding up the trails. I also know that in addition to being good stewards of the land and pretty peacefully coexisting with most animals that we come across, that really, if we're talking about a mile, like I live on Conestoga Road, I probably wouldn't be bothered to ride the 1,000 feet to get to these trails very often. It really is not something that's going to draw me in, because I'd rather go to someplace a little bit further away. We've got Marsh Creek, we've got Wissahickon, we've got Belmont Plateau, we've got half a dozen really good longer distance mountain bike areas within a 30-minute drive. So it's not going to be like, oh man, we have this 1.2 miles of trail, now we have an extra 100 mountain bikers. Most mountain bikers aren't going to make the trip. It's kind of like there's the Chester Valley Trail, gets a lot of bike activity. There's a lot less bikers that are on the Radnor Trail because, again, that 2.4 miles, it's kind of not worth the trip. So it's something that would be good for the kids. I could say also as a trail runner, that's something I might do because it's close by and get a mile or two of trail running in. So it's really, I think it's not going to be the nuisance, and it's not going to be the draw that I think people are afraid of. You know, it does sound like there's some stuff going on in that park. There's some kids that are already, you know, maybe causing a little bit of trouble with those Atlee houses. If there are more people and it is less places to hide, I think that would probably decrease. I think if it's, you know, you don't want to kick walkers off the trail, and certainly like we always try and be respectful of the other trail users. But I think if there's more people using that area and it's less just sort of brush and dark places, I think there's going to be less likelihood of kids going back there. There's going to be potentially less of that nuisance. So it's kind of like you have a neighborhood where there's no street lights. No one can see all the bad stuff going on, but you put in some street lights and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we see what's going on here. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
He brought up a good point. He just said there are several mountain bike areas rather close by that are already built. So it might be simpler just to go there. And I'm not concerned about these children with their coaches there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But they won't be there after dark. But the trail will be.
I say close by for me because I'm an adult with a car. I can on my Sundays off, I can drive to Marsh Creek, and that's a great place to spend a whole day. For something that's like a practice where like my 6th grader, he's got homework. And so someplace where he could go and with his coach and he's not on the team yet, but I'm trying to talk him into it. It's someplace where people can ride to. And I know someone voiced concern about crossing Conestoga Road. I've crossed Conestoga Road on my bicycle 100 times. Is it the most ideal intersection? No, it's not. It's kind of a weird angle. But we shouldn't be saying we can't ride a bike there. We should be trying to figure out ways to make the Conestoga Road intersection more safe for bicyclists, not say, you know, don't ride there. Because we already, you know, try and avoid Lancaster and try and avoid other big roads. I think there's something close that can be used for short amounts of time. So yes, there are things that are close. And honestly, I've ridden in the Willows as well. I think the Willows has water management issues, and there's certainly parts of that get very mucky and puddled. You know, so the Willow has some issues too. I think that having the Willows as a place to ride bikes does not necessarily mean that Odorrcio would not also be something smaller that could also be beneficial to the community and something kind of easy for the kids to get to. Because we certainly wouldn't want these kids saying like, oh, well, you can't cross Conestoga Road, but you're going to ride all the way to the Willows. So.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we heard a great presentation. We heard some very legitimate concerns from the neighbors with regard to the proposal on that trail to Odorrcio. So what we're going to do is we're going to get together with Tammy and talk about next steps with regard to possibly doing a community walk out there for all interested parties to have some more conversation, look at the property, because again, none of us have really had a chance to get out and understand the property we're talking about out there. And you know, we'll continue to progress with this and try to take the concerns from the neighbors and the community into account, as well as the group that like to try and build a trail and try and find a new activity. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Jake, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can you ensure that this issue will be on next month's agenda? Just so, I mean, this was a great discussion, but I think there's more residents who probably want their voice heard on the topic. So I would like for another opportunity to get a letter out to the residents as early as possible so they can show up and participate in this discussion.
Yeah, it definitely will be on the agenda for next meeting next month in April, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to maybe at least have one community meeting at the location where everybody's invited to come out and talk and see and look and, kind of take it from there.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Commission also look at other venues in the township, other parks that might be possible.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be taken into consideration as well. Thank you. Okay. Let's continue on to old business, if we could. Please, we have Fenimore Woods. There's a revised draft concept improvement plan, and we'll take 30 seconds here while folks leave. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you for your patience while we went through that topic. Tammy, do you want to introduce?
Yes, thank you. While we're getting ready here, as we have a little presentation, I just want to give a little bit of background on the subject here. We started talking about Fenimore Woods, and we reviewed a draft improvement plan, a concept plan back on February 7th relative to the park. We discussed and heard a lot of input. We had input and questions from the board, input and questions from a lot of residents who were in attendance. We heard concerns like things that had to do with evaluating the stormwater and how the stormwater moves through the site, how erosion and any washout and things like that will be mitigated through the project development. We looked at things like impact to the trees from the stormwater, impact to the lower portion of the site where the pond is located. We talked about the regrading that would happen in the park and some of the impacts. We heard about sidewalks and the need for sidewalks on some of the adjacent streets to get to the park. And although that's not a direct part of this park development budget, it's definitely something I know we talked about looking at in tandem as we go through the project, and something that could potentially get done or be evaluated parallel to the project. We talked about the pond and different types of treatments and options. As a matter of fact, as we've gone through this in the last month or so, we've actually made a decision to pull the pond portion out of this. So, we talked about treatment to the pond and some of the different options. As of now, that portion of the project is going to be put on the shelf temporarily, of course, as it's reviewed more comprehensively in terms of the overall stormwater issues and impacts throughout the Wayne and North Wayne area. We talked about the tree removals. I know there were some concerns about imminent tree removals that actually we did have tree removals take place shortly after our discussion on the 7th. That following day, we looked at those, and that next week, we had about 10 trees that were removed that were deemed by the township arborist as being dire in terms of emergency hazard to come down. We know that there's about 50 trees total that were to come down, so this was 10 of those trees that were removed out of, I think, the 470 or 500 trees total at the park that were evaluated by the township arborist. We talked about a lot of different things, and keeping in mind that the tree issue is separate from this project, as it had been looked at early on and prior to the project itself getting underway as a separate issue, but obviously something now that's getting a lot of attention because we are talking about the park. So I want to thank the residents, of course, and the board for all the discussion that we've had at that meeting. I think it's important to point out that with Gilmore and Associates, who's been part of our team here working with us, Kevin Selger's with us tonight. He's the Director of Landscape Architecture and Planning for Gilmore and Associates, a firm that has a lot of experience in this area. We've also been working with the township arborist, John Hosbeck, and of course, Steve Norsini, our township engineer. So we've got a lot of professionals that have been guiding us through this project, so I think that's just an important piece to keep in mind. And I can't continue to reiterate enough that the park is in dire need of improvements. There's a couple of things we get a lot of feedback on as a department, and Fenimore Woods and the conditions there is definitely right at the top. Given the magnitude of users at the park throughout the township, throughout the community, lots of groups over the course of the seasons. There's thousands of people who experience the park. Lots of feedback, lots of negative feedback about the conditions at the park. So we know there's a lot of pieces that need to be repaired within there, a lot of aging infrastructure and items that need to be taken care of. So I don't want to steal the floor too much from Kevin. I know he's going to, kind of chart back through some of those things, and then also talk about the changes that we've put in with regards to the revised plan, so we can take a look at those and hear some input, go through some questions, and hopefully get a recommendation tonight to keep moving forward with this project. So Kevin, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've skipped ahead a bit, so we're not re-reviewing things we already looked at last month. Again, to re-review the programming, we have 2 reconfigured parking lots. We have new ADA access, which is an absolute must. New pavilion structure with seating and an adjacent bathroom. Stone walking trail around the pond. That is the one piece of the pond, part of the project, that will continue, just not in the pond itself. A stone walking trail in the upper area of the park, fireplace with seating, the dry stream bed with a new bridge, and we'll talk about that. A new accessible bridge over to the pond area from the upper part of the park, and then we've combined the playgrounds. This was the previous site plan that we presented last month. You'll note the parking area along Paul Road and parking area along Eagle Road, circulation paths. The playground was separated by a dry stream bed. We had the pavilion and bathroom building here, excuse me. Parking area down here, the compost bins, and then an accessible route to a new bridge across the Gulf Creek to a meandering pathway around the existing pond. Keep going. All right, so changes from the last plan was that we have, feedback that we got last time was to combine the separated playgrounds into one, which we've done. We've relocated the dry creek bed around the playground. We've shifted the bathroom and pavilion building a little further uphill, closer to the upper parking lot. And we've also added a gate along Paul Road. That was one specific request. So this is the updated plan. You can see the combined playground. So we've got 2 to 5 and 5 to 12 in a combined setting, which makes a lot of sense. I have a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old. And I'm telling you right now, the 4-year-old wants to go do what the 10-year-old's doing. She actually has no fear. So I think this makes a lot of sense. And this allows us to wrap this dry stream bed around in between the pavilion and the playground. Again, one of the things that we're dealing with is there is water that is coming down. There is runoff that is coming down from the upper areas of the park. And we need a way to convey that water through this area. So we want to use that dry stream bed as one of those things. I'm going to have, the next slide will have some drainage information on it. But for the most part, the plan looks very similar. We have an access here that will be a on-grade access from the pavilion area and bathroom into the playground. So that's a nice feature. We also have a pathway back here that you can get into the back of the pavilion as well as the bathrooms. Let's see, what other changes? Those were probably the biggest changes that we made. We made some adjustments to the dumpster location that we've been going back and forth to Tammy and Public Works about where's the best place for Public Works to be able to get in there to actually service the dumpster. So we've been having ongoing discussions about that. So right now, the dumpster will be located here, so it has access from the pavilion, and then Public Works is amenable to coming in and getting the dumpster out through here. I want to talk a little bit about drainage. There were a lot of concerns brought up last time about stormwater management and drainage, and that was, something that we would be addressing no matter what. We did look at the amount of runoff that's coming from uphill, and the reality is that Eagle Road is actually crowned. There isn't a lot of runoff that's actually coming overland onto the Fenimore Woods site. There is some, but it's not as if Cabrini and all of that runoff is actually coming overland. There is a cutoff swale that's running along Eagle Road here that ends up in this culvert that's underground. There's a 42, 48-inch pipe that actually runs underground and empties out underneath the existing bridge that then feeds into the Gulf Creek. So a lot of that uphill water that's up on Cabrini never actually reaches the surface of Fenimore Woods, at least on the uphill side, until it gets to here where it's entering into the Gulf Creek. So that being said, the water that is coming down, from up in these areas, our plan is to, one, have sheet flow of that water, but to pick it up in a series of swales here and the dry stream bed and bring them down to drains that would enter into rain gardens. The parking lot up here, again, we're looking at rain gardens or biofiltration swales, things like that. This project will be required to have an MPDS stormwater permit from Delaware County. So we have to meet all those requirements in addition to your stormwater ordinance requirements, particularly for water quality. So we're going to have to deploy things like rain gardens, vegetated swales, things of that nature, in addition to the rate control stormwater that you would see typical to a land development. We're likely going to end up with some type of underground stormwater facility, possibly down here. This rain garden may have some underground storage associated with it, again, depending on the amount of water that we will end up analyzing volumetrically to be in these locations. We have a lot of experience doing this and combining this into park infrastructure. We design a lot of green stormwater infrastructure, particularly for the city of Philadelphia. We are often brought in to work with the Philadelphia Water Department and the Philadelphia Parks Department to do partner projects where they're combining a park project with a green stormwater project. We're taking that same approach here. Not sure what else we can talk to. Oh, yes. I brought in some enlargements. So here, this is an enlargement of the circular path area with the new combined playground. You can see the dry creek bed here. Again, this is stone and plantings. It's going to look rather nice. I think it's going to be from a vernacular of that Fenimore Woods as best that we can get it to fit in with that vernacular. The on-grade access between the pavilion and the playground, there is a set of steps here. There will be an accessible route that comes around here. The playground itself is fenced completely around. This will be an interior fence. Fenimore Woods will also have a fence around its perimeter, which will be the split rail with the netting on it. Well, that same detail here associated with the playground. Again, we don't want kids wandering out. With gates here, here, and here. Again, we push the pavilion a little closer, further up the hill with the bathroom, seating areas here, walking paths. We'll likely have some type of rain garden in here and probably a bioswale along here associated with the stormwater management for the park. And then associated with the pond and the pathway, there was a request from the police department to at least be able to drive a cruiser at least up to here. So this is the design we've come up with. Newly planted trees, a 8-foot wide stone pathway, in there. We're going to put some boulders in to kind of make it look like don't drive down here. We may twist this a little more and make it a little more of an S-curve chicane so it's not as attractive to drive down. But that is the function for the police department to at least to be able to get in there for a patrol if they want to. And that's what I have, and I am open to questions. This is the playground, at least the equipment, and the 2 to 5 equipment. And that's the plan. I'm happy to answer anybody's questions.
So while you're on the playground, was there any change to the nature of the equipment, or is it just all now consolidated?
We just repositioned it.
Okay. Thank you.
There might be some changes to the equipment.
We'll see how we do on the budget.
One real quick question.
Yes.
Last time we met, you talked, or some of the neighbors talked about sidewalks on the perimeter of the whole park. Is that?
I think the sidewalks that were discussed were actual sidewalks on Walnut Avenue.
Yeah, okay.
Feeding towards the park. Shimoni, I think there's a desire for them there as well, but I think the desire was from the residents that were here was to have sidewalks coming towards the park.
Okay,
off
I
of
thought
Walnut.
it was on, I thought it was on Paul. Yeah, to go up
Well,
to.
up, okay, so they would come down Walnut and then up Paul, but
Yeah.
they wouldn't be on the park's side. Okay, so they would have to cut over on a crosswalk.
Okay.
Because I actually had met with that resident ahead of the last meeting, and I know there's a strong desire there for sidewalks, but in order for, because where the residences are located that are looking for the accessibility to the park live along Walnut.
Okay.
So those would have to come down Walnut Avenue, come up Paul on their side, the opposite of the park,
Yeah.
on the other side where you can't see here, and then it would have to cut over into the park.
So along the Valley Forge military kind of property there? Is that?
Yes, because
on Walnut?
I understand that that property's for sale, which is currently owned by Eastern.
Thanks.
So that could transact at some point, allowing the possibility for sidewalks, which makes sense. I know there are a lot of people who access the park from that area, but if that project is to get traction, because there would have to be easements granted at each of the property owners' areas there, their property, along their properties, we could certainly set the park up and adjust it to receive sidewalks. Otherwise, it would have to be a crosswalk into the entrance drive right at Paul, the newly relocated entrance drive.
Yeah, and I walked that, Claire, earlier this week, and sidewalks are kind of a separate project from the park project because there really is no space for sidewalks along, obviously, Eagle Road or Paul Road, as it's currently configured. The sidewalks would have to be in the neighborhoods to help residents get closer to the park. But I think that's a separate issue than the one we're talking about here with regard to the project. Other questions for Kevin?
I just have one question about I don't know what they're called, but they had put them in for some type of rain treatment or water.
The reed beds?
Yeah, the reed beds, that's it.
The current plan is to remove the reed beds because they're literally not functioning in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, so our intent would be to remove those and redesign the area based on the enlarged area that Kevin had shown, because they actually got destroyed during the August 13th storm. I know Public Works tried to rebuild those a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what they did to them, but I know they were washed out pretty bad, so they tried to clean that area up. So the thought that would be moving forward, that as the pond is addressed, maybe some type of a new structure is developed in that area. Maybe it's not reed beds at all. So the intent would be is that since they're not functioning and there's no oversight to see them, to reconstruct them, that we would remove them from that area. And then other considerations would come into play. As I had mentioned, the pond is looked at in terms of a full comprehensive stormwater plan.
So the decision by staff at this point is to take the pond out of play for this project as we're currently looking at and reviewing for a possible recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, number one. Excuse me, number two, on the reeds, would they come out as part of this project, or the reeds would stay there until we address the pond?
The reed beds would be removed as part of this project, and yes, the pond would come out as part of this portion of the project so that it could be looked at comprehensively. I think Kevin could speak to it more than me, but the pond itself isn't functioning from the Gulf Creek. It's not really receiving water from anywhere. The Gulf Creek doesn't empty into it unless it was to overflow. Obviously the major flooding and the storms would cause that to happen, but there's no connectivity to it. So it's really just a stagnant body of water at that point. So I think the thought is, in the future, how can we make it function relative to the concerns that are, ongoing and have been discussed for a long time relative to stormwater issues upstream in North Wayne.
And there are, based on last meeting, there seems to be some competing viewpoints of ice skating versus fishing, so all those things really need to be vetted and balanced out. And to keep the park project moving, I think we all agree that let's take the water work out and push that aside for another day. But we would be doing the path around the pond, but not the in-water work.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a gate on the police cruiser driveway, or is that just?
That's a design detail. I mean, we might look at a gate. That's something
Yeah, we could look at bollards. We have bollards at Clemacrone. There's some options. And like Kevin had mentioned, once we get into design, that's something that we would look at. Maybe there's a way to, like he was saying, serpentine it in so it's very obscure, so it doesn't look like it's something that, just anyone could drive into. Because I know that was definitely one of our concerns was, can somebody just drive into the pond area and loop around? Because we certainly wouldn't want that to happen, so that would definitely be evaluated.
How is the pond fed?
It's probably from groundwater. I mean, the Gulf Creek is there, the water table is close by. I mean, the surface of the creek is essentially the water table. But there is no actual physical connection aside from there is a gate on the other side that enters a swale that then, or a channel that goes into the Gulf Creek, but it's not feeding it per se. And you can't divert the Gulf Creek into the pond.
Well, excuse me, but for years there, where that little dam is, there was a 4-inch or 6-inch pipe with a big valve on it, and that was adjusted to maintain a positive flow through the pond.
That may be an historic structure. I'm not sure the DEP would allow that now.
I have a couple of thoughts or comments. First of all, I don't know why we have compost bins at Fenimore Woods. I'd like to take them out. I'm not an advocate of spending $2 million on a park just to have a compost bin where people can back their cars up and shovel compost and make a mess of it. I think there's other areas in this township where people can get their compost, so my personal preference would be not to have compost bins at this park. The second comment I had is the fireplace that you showed, which I apologize, I had to walk out when you were showing it, the little coughing attack there, but it's beautiful. My concern is who's going to keep that up? Knowing people and how people treat things, et cetera, it looks like it's a very expensive amenity to this park, and I just don't have the confidence in the general public using it and maintaining it, and it's one more thing the staff would have to maintain and repair over the years, et cetera. The park can't get used after dusk anyway, so if we need to make plans for other, ability to grill in there, and again, I'm not sure that I necessarily think people need to be able to grill in the park, but that's something we can certainly talk about. I'm just not sure I want to see them spending the money to put that fireplace in there, as beautiful as it is. I just think it'll cause problems down the road. And then my last comment is, I'm no expert on water management, but I just want to make sure that, you know, your group has done everything that you can from a water management standpoint to make sure that once we invest all these funds in a park, that August 13th comes again this year, or next year, or the year after, that we don't have significant damage in the park from a water event like that, which seems to be coming more frequently.
I can comment on the two items there you had previously. With regards to the fireplace, that was my suggestion. I know that folks use the grills, and I believe they use them pretty responsibly. You know, we have the cast iron grills that are there, and a lot of the parks are steel, whatever they're made out of, aluminum, I'm not even sure. And I think folks do a pretty good job of cleaning those up. The only problem is for the size of the events that takes place at Fenimore, we've gotten some pretty big family reunions and parties and things that go on. The grills just don't seem to be sufficient in terms of cooking, because some folks do like to grill as part of their event. Although there's plenty that, you know, they have it catered and, you know, bring in food and the whole bit. So the thought behind the fireplace was, again, conceptually, you know, we can discuss it, was to have a larger opportunity for folks to provide food and grill for a larger contingency of folks attending their parties. You know, I mean, right now, we really don't have issues with people not cleaning up after themselves at the smaller grills. It's not to say that a larger one, you know, it could be much different, but maybe that's something we could look a little bit more closely at. And that could be one of those things, you know, we kind of, you know, work through, and maybe it's not quite that large, but some type of structure that allows for a greater amount of food to be cooked at one point in time.
I hear what you're saying, but also if you've got that fireplace there, people aren't necessarily going to be grilling. They might be bringing their own wood in, setting fires in there during the day, at the kind of fire pit type of thing, and who's going to clean up after that type of thing. So I hear what you're saying, and
Sure.
I think it's great. It concerns me that it will become more of a problem than an amenity after, you know, a year or so.
Okay, we
So
can take a look
just
at
my
that.
own personal
Absolutely,
opinion.
it's a
I
valid
don't know how everybody else feels
point.
about it.
If I could just hop, before you move to the next point, Tammy, to piggyback on that, we talked about the attractive nuisance of a 6-foot wide path through woods for an hour and a half. We have two colleges that border this. If that's not an attractive nuisance for kids to come in and light fires, I don't know what is. So
Right.
I have an additional concern, if we're going to apply the same standards across these projects.
Point
that's certainly
taken,
one.
absolutely. Again, you know, open for dialogue. I'm not committed to it. I'll take responsibility for it. The other item is the compost bins. I think we're drifting into another topic that could probably be another hour and a half meeting to discuss. I have a lot of people who really, like, you know, they're faithful to these compost bins. A lot of folks are attached to them. I think if we're going to remove them from park locations, we need to address that full scale across the township. It's just my suggestion. It's not directly shown. I guess they're kind of shown on the drawing here. I'm not sure if it was intended, but like we did at Beauconnor Philip Home, are they probably down in the corner there? Okay. The thought is that we would actually carve out, you know, the actual defined locations, whereas now it's just, you know, it's just dumped in a large pile and it's all mixed up.
All right.
So I just think that
You know my
we might
opinion
have
on
some
this, Tammy. That we can go to Willows, Skunk Hollow, we can go to Ithan Valley Park and get our compost in our parks where we're putting a lot of money into those parks. In my opinion, and I'm not speaking for this board, it's my opinion, we don't need people coming in and getting compost and making a mess of things when we're trying to make a beautiful park. That's just one man's opinion.
Yeah, I just would suggest it as a full discussion topic, and then, you know, we look at it, because, I mean, Emlyn Tunnel, I have the biggest concern, location-wise, not to drift from Fenimore Woods, but that's one park where it's very difficult, but I also know it's also one park where if we take it away, we could have a lot of feedback as well, so.
Yeah, one or two people.
It's a lot in this township.
Yeah, in that area it is.
Can we go back to the fire pit 1 second? I just want to say that I'm a proponent for the fire pit because I think it gives this type of park that we're going to spend a lot of money on an opportunity for people to do the right thing. It's a gathering place. It's a, I think people can, I think our citizens, our residents can handle it, and it makes it a really nice feature, a little bit of cut above. That's just.
I've also, just real quick, I had the opportunity to meet with both Cabrini and Eastern, representatives from both college universities, and they are receptive to ongoing discussions about students and their activities within the park. So I think that's a positive as well as part of this. They're also, I don't want to speak for them, but they've been very supportive of the park project. So I think it's also an opportunity that we can keep engaging them on a lot of different topics, that being one, regardless of what happens moving forward.
That'd be great. Any additional questions from this board for Kevin? What I'd like to do is offer up the opportunity for any public participation with regard to this Fenmore Woods.
Hi, it's Gretchen Grobel from the Radnor Conservancy. And I just had a couple of questions about the material for the parking lots. Are they porous, or can you just talk a little bit about the materials for the parking lots?
Parking lot's going to be crushed gravel, which we've discussed with staff and Public Works about maintenance and the ability to maintain them, and the answer is yes. We do need to pave, hard pave, accessible parking to meet ADA. So here, we're going to pave those with asphalt, and these couple spaces here, and I think we may actually end up with 2 spaces down here. We will also pave either with asphalt or have a concrete apron at the entrances here, here, again, to keep the gravel out of the adjacent roadway. It also gives us the opportunity to design the apron in such a way that we're not allowing water from the roadway and right-of-way to come into the park. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks. When at the last presentation, John Hosback talked about, where the bulk of the large shade trees are going to be coming down. So I know that you took 10 down already. So another 40. And I just want to double check, they're coming out around the circle there, where the playground is and where the swale is that right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm still just really concerned about the amount of stormwater. I mean, with taking an additional 40 trees down and the amount of stormwater coming down that. Do you have a sense of when the trees are going to come down? And is this going to be phased, or are they coming down all at once, or just curious?
Well, the intent is that they would come down all at once
Okay.
as part of the project, and they would be bid as part of the project. But one thing to keep in mind too, you have a significant slope.
Yes.
In the park right now where significant regrading is going to take place. So I don't know what the exact height that's going to come up to, but it's going to be raised. There's going to be a lot of ground movement. I know that right now you have very compacted soils. You have roots exposed. It's almost like a hard surface through there. And I think once the opportunity to perform the regrading, addressing with topsoil, and then replanting, of course, we would want to have a native plan, have a very well thought out plan for how it would be replanted. I think you're going to create absorption in that area that you don't have right now.
And is there any, I know that, you have a plan to replace a lot of, old mature trees with new plantings. Is there any kind of maintenance, after this project is installed? What happens with maintenance to, these however many trees and, plantings? Is there, any kind of maintenance plan or anything in place to ensure, their success?
We've had internal discussions about that because I think one of the things we have to be willing to accept that is if we're going to budget money to repair parks and improve parks, there's going to be a natural impact to maintenance. It's a given. And I don't know if you want to hold it against me for saying that, but I think if we're going to make improvements, we have to budget to maintain our parks, and that includes our trees, it includes everything else that's there. I mean, we all know that there is an impact that's there. So internally, we've had that discussion, and we've talked about it with Public Works, and those trees are going to have water bags attached to them. They're going to have to be addressed on a regular basis. We know that there's going to be ability to take a vehicle through here, so they have a water truck. They're going to have to go through, and they're going to have to put the attention and the time to make sure that it thrives. So we are having those internal discussions, and the township has to make a commitment to be able to stand behind that. Otherwise, we should just stop now and quit on the project.
I just wanted to make one other comment. Just from me being at the other meeting and listening to a couple of residents' comments about the sidewalks or what I took away, I thought that they were suggesting or they were hoping that just because this is Eagle Road, it's a major thoroughfare through, Eastern Cabrini, people trying to run, people trying to bike. This is such a great opportunity to, even if you could put the fence, even if there's like a walking path, I mean, I don't know that it has to be, like a proper sidewalk, but somewhere off-road where a pedestrian could walk safely on that and get into town. But that's just what I took away from a couple of residents and people that lived in the neighborhood. Just that, this is such an important connection and, busy, way that people, connect into downtown or, and it would be a great opportunity to, just bring a safer access to, walking along, Eagle Road and Paul. It's just, there's nowhere for pedestrians or bicyclists to go.
But at this point, couldn't they connect just right through the park?
Yeah.
They could just cut right through the park and go right to the sidewalk that unfortunately doesn't exist now, but, would be hopeful in the future along Paul Road, along Walnut. Or Shimoni.
I have a thought about that too. Is the driveway that goes up to Cabrini near that circular,
Thank you, guys.
on Eagle Road? So you know how that works?
Thank you.
Is that right across from Paul Road?
Yeah.
So that's really.
But it's also an access out. It's not really designed as an access in.
Into Cabrini.
Into Cabrini.
But so I'm saying, so there's really not much else there. So kids coming out of Cabrini are coming there, and there's stairs.
When I met with Cabrini, my understanding is that the access is on Radnor, what is it? Sorry. King of Prussia Road, sorry. That's where the majority of the access is. That's where they are communicating with their students, their population, to access in and out. That it's not to come in and out off of Eagle Road.
Okay. But if you're a pedestrian, I think you're right. You can walk right through the park.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could, and we could create a gate there too. I think that was one of the requests they actually had, which we
On
would
that
put
corner.
within that.
On the Paul Road.
If they were to
end.
come off the Cabrini site, they could come across and right into the park,
Yep.
right up at the corner where the two roads
Yep.
meet.
That's-
So like right now, there's a plan to have a fence, but we could situate it so that it's staggered, similar to what we have at Beauconnor, so that somebody could come in and go right in through the park.
If I may, Michael Bowen, and I live actually near there, and I drive by there all the time.
Could you step to the mic, please?
I'm sorry. The reason I disagree with that is because right at the top of Paul Road there is where the gate is, and that's really the only place where the pedestrians or the people from Cabrini coming down to get into town would come through. And I don't have a horse in this race, and just I'm very familiar with this area. And so they wouldn't travel what would be east to the right here on Eagle Road to come into the park, and they wouldn't come down Paul Road and then cut into the park to get to town. They'd just come down Paul Road, make that right, and follow Walnut into town, so they wouldn't go through there at all. So I think that the person who spoke earlier, who was talking about trying to help people get from Cabrini past the park, and again, I don't have a horse in this race, but I think what the thought was that along Paul Road there. But I think in terms of the entrances to this park, either from Eagle or from Paul, really don't come into play because it's not near the stairs that come down from Cabrini and cross into Eastern. And other than that long winding driveway that comes down from Cabrini, there's really no other way for. Those are really the only two ways for people to come down from Cabrini. The other question that I had, because I've been driving past that site for 20 years, as I say, it looks as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no plan for the building that is there. Has that just decayed to such an extent that that's going to be lost now, this historic building?
It is, that building is in bad repair.
Unsafe.
We would end up
coming down.
investing the cost of the park that we have here to renovate the park into that building if we were to restore it.
Yeah, understood. It's a shame to lose historic buildings, and it's a shame that perhaps, I don't know if it had been taken care of along the years, it wouldn't cost the entire cost of the park to fix it, but that's a tragedy. So, thank you.
Thank you. We did have a cell tower company that was offering to pay to refurb that building about 5 years ago.
We did, and
if I
just for the
remember.
record, that tower is going to,
Just for the record.
just for the record too, though, that tower is being evaluated on Eastern's campus.
Yep.
So stay tuned, it might be coming soon.
Tammy, what exactly are you looking for from this board this evening?
What we would like tonight is a recommendation to move forward conceptually with this plan so we can get to work on more thorough design and hopefully go to bid soon.
And that will be in the form of a resolution from this board to the Board of Commissioners suggesting that the plan be moved forward, obviously more details to come, and maybe with a comment about the support for the needed maintenance going forward once you've invested in a park to continue with that. Yes?
Yes.
I have one more question.
Please.
The question related to how close to Paul Road is the fence? That you say that we're going to fence this in, I think, which is what people are talking about. How close will the fence be to Paul Road? Along Paul Road.
Several feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, something in that order.
It's not right against Paul
No,
Road.
it's not right up
So
against the
there
curb.
will be an area between Paul Road,
Yeah.
the road itself, and the park.
Yes.
So if people were to walk there, they wouldn't have to walk on the street, in other words. There would be a grassy area that they could.
I just don't see a lot of pedestrian traffic
I don't either.
other than the college kids,
No,
and
no.
I'm not going to worry about college kids.
No, I'm not worried about it,
from a
but
pedestrian
what I'm
standpoint,
saying is we're not going to have our fence right against the road. There is going to be some area there. That's kind of what I was saying.
Right, someone could choose to walk in the grass. There's probably at least a 10-foot buffer that would be there, and they could walk through at that point. But I would just suggest that, because I don't want to dismiss the importance of sidewalks anywhere. I mean, sidewalks are needed everywhere, and I think those, especially towards parks and even speed bumps, are very important. But I think that if some of the other projects with regards to sidewalks in this area, if they're to get traction while we're in the process of designing this project, we would certainly look at those parallel to how this project ultimately is laid out. So I think that's important for us to understand. Or even if there's some conceptual plan that someone is looking at right now relative to sidewalks, I would offer to re-engage that property owner along Walnut, just to see is there some plan or consideration given, and does that call for some readjustment to something within the park that could meet that more easily? Not sure if that makes sense, but it just seems like something that's worthwhile just to keep as an open discussion point on this project until it actually, obviously is finalized and ready to bid.
Tammy, are there any communication issues at this park?
That's a loaded question. I personally have never had any issues at the park, but I have understood from others that there are significant communication issues at the park.
Do our fire and police teams have any communication concerns for this park?
I believe they do, yes. But if Eastern gets the cell tower, there won't be any more. Just saying. It's a possibility.
I don't know anything about the cell tower at Eastern. Is that something you know enough about to comment
My
on?
understanding is the same company that's proposed there is having those discussions relative to Eastern, so it certainly could be a public topic possibly soon.
Okay, does anyone on this board have an interest in making a recommendation for us to consider with regard to Fenimore Woods? Tammy,
I would make a recommendation that we bring it forward to the Board of Commissioners. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, but I need something with language. What language are you proposing? Excuse me, John?
Do it in Spanish, yeah. I have enough trouble in English, John. Yeah, I guess I would like to make a motion that we bring the plan presented to us, to the Board of Commissioners for their approval. Is that, I mean, what exactly, because I'm somewhat new at this, maybe I'll turn to my colleague over here at the
Oh, come on, Chuck, you're not new at this.
I honestly do not make too many of these motions.
How about a recommendation to move this conceptual design forward to the Board of Commissioners with our input to have additional consideration being given to whatever pet issues we might want to address. And I think communications would be one. And there's at least a couple people at least mentioned looking into the fireplace. I know there's obviously always, there's concern about the storm water, which I would assume would have to be part of the operational details that we worked out anyway. I don't think there are any other concerns beyond the concept, but I think certainly hearing this communication issue, that troubles me once again.
Yes.
That we're going to invite new people and more people into the parks, and God forbid, with thin ice at a pond, and then we can't get people proper attention.
I'll second that.
Is the language that we're looking for like preliminary approval, something like along those lines?
Yeah, we don't have the authority to approve anything at this board. All we can do is make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. And so typically when we've done that in the past, we've made a recommendation, and if we had some concerns or other contingencies, we add those on to it, similar to what Bill had there. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking for, and I kind of like the language that Bill had on there.
Mulch pile is at least one person raised
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
and I don't say it tongue in cheek, but I think
No.
it's, and I share, it's
Well, I
something
think
should be looked at.
Tammy, little details will be worked on, like the fireplace or the mulch, or whatever else that anybody else has a concern about, whether it's at this level or at the Board of Commissioners, correct? We're just suggesting to the Board of Commissioners that we like the conceptual plan, and we'd like them to approve you and staff moving forward with this plan with a goal in mind of a project down the road.
Yes, and then I would continue to report back to this board if there were any issues that would arise along that way, you know, if there was anything that came up that we would have to maybe reopen or rediscuss, or to get your opinion on anything that would, you know, surface, and then report back to this board on how that continues to move along.
And that's fine. I just think, and I'm certainly open to other thoughts from this board, I always think that when we're approving something, if there's a communication risk or concern, that we let the Board of Commissioners know that we're concerned about that, and we think they should address that, number one. And number two, the maintenance issue is an excellent issue, and we're spending a lot of money to revitalize these parks, and we want to make sure that the commissioners know that we are concerned about ongoing maintenance. So I would want, me personally, I would want to tie something on to any proposal we would make going forward on that. And I'm certainly open to other thoughts on that from you all.
I wonder if we should include some language that this board be part of the continual approval process. I don't know how. once it goes to the Board of Commissioners, does it not circle back?
Well, I think Tammy said that she would continue to keep us up to date on this, and then at any time that we had a concern on something, we could then make a follow-up resolution. There may be a specific term on that, but a follow-up resolution to the board to let them know we have a concern, if that works okay from your standpoint. So, Bill, do you mind reading that one more time for us?
But before I do that, it sounds like maintenance, runoff, and communication issues were the big ones. There might be some details of whether you have a mulch pile or a fireplace or parking a certain configuration, but I think those were the three that I didn't hear any departure from each other on this board that might be points of concern for the Board of Commissioners. I don't know if I missed any or there's any other issues folks thought should be added, but I'll take a stab at a motion adding those things. So I guess the proposal will be that we recommend that the Board of Commissioners consider this conceptual design as presented, with paying special attention to communication, runoff, and maintenance issues, and making sure that those three issues are part of the discussion in crafting a formal plan, which will go out for bid.
Can I add trees to the maintenance?
Yes.
Specifically?
Add what? Trees. Yes.
Rather, because maintenance sometimes can be trash removal. I'd like to see tree maintenance.
Sure.
So, since we're going to spend a lot of money on it.
As I recall, that garnered a significant amount of attention last time, so that's good. Just one quick, I think as long as the idea that we want this to move forward, but, we just have those caveats. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Is there any other discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, all right, carries. Kevin, thank you very much for your time. Sorry for the long wait for you this evening. Tammy, given the time that we spent here this evening, unless there's something specific you'd like to go over, I'd like to take a pass on the report, unless you have 2 minutes of the most important 2 or 3 items.
Come on, it's only 9 o'clock. I've got 2 quick items.
2 quick items,
I
thank
feel
you.
compelled to update the board with regards to Emlyn Tunnel. I think that's an important one. I know it's been on our agenda a lot. At this point in time, I think we're just to update on the status. I understand that it was approved by the school district, the addendum, the lease addendum. So we had a lot of discussion about the lease addendum at the last meeting, and I think at some point it was decided that the lease addendum was integral to the process. And the school board approved it, I believe. We haven't heard any follow-up, or I haven't received a document, so I just figured since I have the opportunity with you here, we could maybe get an update, because I think we're waiting on it, and then at which point, if you approved it, I'm not sure if you approved it, though. I'm assuming you did. I didn't watch the meeting. And then we would take it to our board
Never a good sign.
for their review.
Just a couple of quick points. No. I think the way that we worded it in our last business meeting was that we all agreed that we wanted the addendum to be part of the process. So, and yes, we approved it. Yep, it's part of our consent agenda.
It's been approved in public.
Okay, can we get a copy of it then, so we can, because I'm not sure if language changed in it or what had happened. I just want to make sure that we get it to our Board of Commissioners soon.
Well, your people should contact our people. This is an issue that I've had, an ongoing issue that I have with government in the sense. It seems like we try to get in each other's way instead of trying to move together towards it. But yes.
Well, maybe your people should contact us and email it, or send it, or do whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll be ready to move forward. So the next step after that would be, if you've approved it, we'll take it to our board. It'll be an ordinance on our end, so it's a 2-step, 2-meeting process where we'll have to introduce it, have a 10-day notice, come back, and then approve it at a subsequent meeting. And then the thought is at that subsequent meeting, anticipating the approval, we'll ask for authorization to purchase the building.
Chuck, would you or Andrew, one of you mind
Yeah, we
emailing Ken and asking him to send over a copy of the
Absolutely.
execute agreement?
I'll do that tonight.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But it seems to me that there should not be a holdup with you guys sending out proposals to get back. I mean, it's done. I just don't see all the issues that we've created. Not we, I don't know who created, but we will contact Ken, and hopefully that'll be enough to get it to move forward. I'm a little bit disgusted with the whole governmental issue with this between the two governments, not anybody in particular, just I think we need to strengthen this process up, have the linkage, so if there's a program that goes, and there needs to be consent between the two places, that we find a way to get it done without this long, drawn out, almost seems to be at times adversarial roles that have been taking place. So we need to work this out. So we look forward to moving it forward, and Andrew will take care of that piece tonight. And if you don't hear back from our people, send us an email, and then we'll follow up.
And then we need to sign it and send it back to them.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think we need to sign it?
Oh, we do. I thought you meant like this board.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, not us. I mean, we
No,
as in
we
Radnor
can't.
Township as opposed to.
We do. We
yes.
have to approve it. Well, first we have to introduce it. Then it gets a 10-day public notice sent to the paper, the patch, what have you, and then it would come back for approval.
Okay.
So 2 meetings. So earliest hopefully would be March 25th, and then I'm not sure what the first meeting, April 8th, I believe, might be. So maybe April, whatever the first meeting in April could be the adoption of the ordinance.
Great, okay. Tim, you said you had a couple things. Is there something else?
The only other thing was Sulpizio, another great topic. Just a quick update, we're still working through the process, obviously, to get the gym back open. So it's still closed. I know that there was a report that did come out I know we had a report from a structural engineer that was done on February 4th. We received it on March 4th. So I think we have some concerns with it because it does draw some attention to roofing issues that I don't think we were aware we had because we had significant roofing repairs done. So it alludes to deficiencies in the main roof, which while we were having the floor repaired, we had significant work done on the main roof. So it tells me that the work was insufficient based on that report and the way that reads. It also alludes to other items there, but the problem is, I think, is that there was never any floor penetrations done, by the structural engineer. The floor was never opened up and evaluated. We don't know if there's infiltration that has come up from ground infiltration from all the saturation in the water. So I think we're trying to sift through that. I know the township's had an independent report done on it as well. And then in the process of meeting with the school district too to talk about it further and discuss how we're going to move forward, because it's concerning. It's a significant concern, and every day we continue to sort this out, the gym remains closed because the gym, there are safety concerns there. And I was in there last week again, and the floor continues to separate. It's not something I don't think either one of our entities, being the school district and the township, wants to accept and be on the hook for, at least the township, being on the hook for all the subsequent repairs that could come long after the flooring company's done and has moved on. But our community suffers every day because they don't get to use the facility. And it's been really, really difficult to relocate events and programs. We've had some success. We've had a lot of failure to that. So it's definitely harnessed our department in a lot of ways during what's already a busy time with a number of events coming up in summer planning. So we've definitely seen the deficits of programming, unfortunately, and as we know, busy indoor usage season that has suffered. So hopefully we'll have a better update in April.
Great, thank you, and I'll chat with you offline on that as well. John, is there anything from the Board of Commissioners that you'd like to?
I just want to remind you that this year we added 10 meetings, and those meetings are all dedicated subject meetings. You should keep your eye open. Sometime, I think, April, we are doing capital plans. And this is all about you know, historically, Radnor hasn't done a good job of, we come up with a capital plan, but we never come up with a funding plan to go with it. Well, so we're trying to correct that situation. As always, my fear is Parks ends up getting short shrift, which historically has happened year after year. But if you have any input into this or want to pay attention to it, I think it'd be a good idea.
So Tammy, you could let us know as a board when that special meeting is being held so that.
April 29th.
Oh, April 29th.
Sure, and I provided a schedule, but I'll redistribute that. That was approved by the board, outlining the specific topics.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Howard?
A quick question for Tammy. The activities for tomorrow night that were supposed to be scheduled for the Radnor Activity Center, is that still on?
No, we actually learned today that we don't have the facility to offer that.
Chuck and Andrew, any other information on the school board that we should be aware of? No. Any other business or a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you.